Did include the live transcript, so that has been turned on. If anyone else has any other access needs, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll try to accommodate as best as possible. A quick visual description of myself right now before I share my presentation. I have short brown hair and vintage glasses and wearing a maroon sweater. I am white with light skin, and you can't see my wheelchair because I have that background green color covering it, but I am sitting in my cozy wheelchair right now. So I will go ahead and start this presentation. All right. Can everyone see that perfectly? Let's try to open this up a bit.
Yep.
Okay, great. Awesome. Because it like does this weird presenter view. All right. Slide 1. Is it accessible? Slide 2, a bit about me. Hi, everyone. My name is Jess, pronouns she, her. I'm a freelance disabled designer from Ontario, Canada, Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, which is situated on the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. My focus, bridging the gap between design and accessibility from a community-focused perspective. Image description, me smiling, sitting all cute in my power wheelchair, parked on an angle outside Red Church Cafe. I am white with olive skin, green eyes, and brown hair tied back in a low bun. I'm wearing a white collared shirt, light denim jeans, and camel-colored lace-up boots. Slide 3, presentation breakdown. Today we're going to explore accessibility in digital design, which is more than technical standards. Access must center the disabled community and the importance of allyship. After a quick disclaimer, here's a breakdown of what this workshop will cover. Disability culture, supporting the community, designing accessible content, sharing content online, resources and links, followed by live questions and answers segment at the end that will be added to this transcript later on. Slide 4, disclaimer. Model Trista Marie McGovern, Instagram user at Trista Marie MCG, or user at Trista Marie Photo. Photography by Emma Wandra. Image description, Trista lying on a bed of small daisies with a bearded person behind them resting their head on her hip. Trista has light skin, pale blue eyes, and is looking to the distance while resting her head on her hand. She has a nose piercing and black lace lingerie. Her hair is up in a bun. Slide 5. Each title slide showcases art or images by disabled creatives. For transparency, the artists have been credited and compensated for the usage of their work. I highly suggest you follow these incredible creatives, and I thank them for their contribution to this presentation. Number 2, I'm a wheelchair user with some undiagnosed form of muscular dystrophy. My lived experiences come from a white heteroprivileged place within the disabled community. Number 3, my perspectives may differ from others, and that's okay. Don't take this as the end-all be-all for disability representation. Number 4, accessibility is a human right, not a trend. We've been out here doing the work our whole lives out of necessity. Number 5, accessible design is an ongoing practice. Yes, there are basic standards to adhere to, but practices adapt over time. There needs to be flexibility in order to suit individual needs. Slide 6, disability culture. Artwork by Jen White Johnson, she, her. Instagram user at JT Knox Rocks. Caption and image description by Jen White Johnson. My piece is a digital photograph titled Aerojoy. The title is a play on the hashtag autistic joy that I've been using in my design work that is meant to amplify Black disabled lives and acceptance in the autism community, particularly the autism community of color. My son was diagnosed as autistic when he was 3 years old, and I have ADHD. We are a very vibrant and joyful neurodiverse Black family, a notion that you often don't see praised or highlighted in mainstream media. Boy is smiling with hues and blues of purples illuminating on his face. He is wearing a NASA space helmet. Slide 7. It is impossible to build for a community without knowing anything about it. Successful design needs a human approach. In order to support accessibility, we must first understand some basic principles of disability culture. I could spend an entire presentation on this topic alone, but in order to keep it design focused, I'll cover some terms that I believe are relevant to this workshop. Slide 8. What is ableism? You may have come across this word, especially regarding disability activism. The most powerful definition I've come across was by Talila Lewis: a system that places value on people's bodies and minds based on societal constructed ideas of normality, intelligence, excellence, desirability, and productivity. These constructed ideas are deeply rooted in anti-Blackness, eugenics, misogyny, colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism. You do not have to be disabled to experience ableism. Source: Talila Lewis or TL on Instagram. Slide 9. Disability justice. Unlearning ableism can start with embracing a disability justice framework. Sins Invalid has a beautiful overview of this principle in their article, What is Disability Justice? This framework understands that all bodies are unique and essential. All bodies have strengths and needs that must be met. We are powerful, not despite the complexities of our bodies, but because of them. All bodies are confined by ability, race, gender, sexuality, class, nation state, religion, and more, and we cannot separate them. I also apply this for my own work, to create and design for every single body, adapting for individual preferences, and most importantly, to understand that accessible practices are really human practices. They must continually change to meet everyone's needs. Slide 10, individual preferences. There are many forms of disability: visible and invisible, physical and chronic illness, neurodivergent and autistic, deaf or hard of hearing, blind or low vision, mental health conditions, and so on. We must be mindful of the intersections of race, gender, and sexuality within these spaces. In general, there are communal agreements, avoiding terms like special needs or ableist slurs, with different opinions on identity, from disabled person or identity first language to person with a disability or person first language, even down to choosing whether or not to identify as disabled at all. Personally, I use identity first language because of my deep sense of pride for having a disability. It's shaped many aspects of my personality and how I navigate through life. Though I completely understand that I've had that privilege to freely identify as such without much consequence. Others, especially with multiple marginalized identities, don't necessarily have the safe space to do the same. And even so, every person has their own relationship with their disability. It is not a universal thing. Even though as a community, there's an emphasis for identity first language in disability advocacy, it's important to acknowledge that not everyone can or will model that approach. So navigating the community involves getting to know your audience on an individual level. If you don't know how to address someone, ask them. Slide 11, supporting the community. Photography by Gary, he, him, Instagram user at It's Gary's Plants. Image description: dynamic close-up of a vivid green cactus plant in an orange pot, backlit in a bright red light. Slide 12, navigating allyship. Respect disabled people's preferences. There is no one answer solution in such a diverse community with varying intersections. We all mess up. To err is human. Hold yourself accountable. If a disabled person is coming to you with concerns, it's an opportunity to do better. Reflect rather than going on the defense with intent. Be authentic, not performative. Accessibility isn't something to use as a "look how inclusive we are" boast. It's a basic human right. Disabled people have been doing the work our whole lives out of sheer necessity. Follow disabled people, learn, and adapt with time. The best way to learn about a community is to engage. Follow us on social media. Research disabled-led practices. Accessibility changes with the time. By plugging into the community, you'll have a better access to new techniques. Slide 13. Create accessible spaces. Get to know user preferences. Allyship means nothing if we're not actively working on making our spaces available for everyone. Provide ways for users to submit their access needs before events, webinars, or on any platform where you want to provide better access. Involve disabled people throughout the process, starting by asking for input. Get feedback from actual disabled users in your case studies or research. Hire disabled people. Pay us for our time and contributions, whether it's for consulting or our services. We exist, we're skilled, and our involvement at the table is crucial. Slide 14, designing accessible content. Artwork by Ty Dykema, he, him, Instagram user at tmd.art. Image description, a drawing of Alice Wong, an Asian American woman's face. She's wearing a black scarf with white swords on it and a gray purple BiPAP mat over her nose with darker gray tubes coming out of the front of it. She has shoulder-length black hair with a slight undercut on one side. She has red lipstick and is slightly smiling. Slide 15. Color contrast. This is more of an art than people realize, especially when creating a palette for a brand. Here are some things to consider. Number 1, what is the purpose for each color? Establish what colors are for backgrounds, text, or for graphic shapes and CTAs. This will help you create versatile pairings and accessible rules for point number 4. Number 2, find the contrast balance. You need a minimum contrast of 4.5 to 1 for text and 3 to 1 for graphics to meet AA compliance. But if the contrast is too high, you can get eye and head strain. If in doubt, try to keep it within the CMYK space. Number 3, how does it look grayscale? Put all your colors next to each other and make it grayscale. Can you still differentiate each color? If not, adjust hues so there's a better contrast. Number 4, make rules. I add color contrast charts for brand guides, showing which colors to pair and what to avoid. Outline the purpose of the color pairings so clients know when and how to use them together. Slide 16, color example. Image description to the left. 4 color strips in wave shapes that are numbered against a pale peach background. 01 is navy blue, 02 is bright red, 03 is peach, 04 is white. This is an accessible palette I created for a client. Here's the contrast breakdown. Navy pairs with peach or white with a ratio of 11 to 1 and 18 to 1. That allows for white body text and peach headers against navy backgrounds, and vice versa. It also pairs with red for graphics only with a ratio of 4 to 1. So red can be background shapes or CTA buttons. Red can be paired with white for large text with a 4.5 to 1 ratio. That gives a secondary style with red backgrounds and white large text, with navy and peach supporting graphics. And of course, peach and white act as light background styling options. So there really are plenty of combos to play around with. Slide 17, typography. In general, there are rules from Wcag, plus some additional tips for choosing legible font styles. Number 1, sizing. Use larger fonts. I like a minimum of 13 point, and provide options for users to change the font size and family in web apps. Scale headings accordingly so there's a distinction between hierarchies. Example, 30 points for a heading level 1, 20 point for heading level 2, and 13 point for paragraph tags. Number 2, spacing, based on the font size. Minimum line height, 1.5 times larger. Paragraph spacing, 2 times larger. Letter spacing, 0.12 times, and word spacing, 0.16 times larger. Number 3, alignment. Left aligned is the most readable. Try to avoid center or right aligned in large portions or using a combination of alignments. Stick to one. And number 4, legibility. This is a bit of an art. Sans serifs are more readable visually, but slabs can have better character differences for dyslexia. There are dyslexic-friendly fonts, but using them in bulk could be overstimulating. Avoid using decorative or over-stylized typefaces that aren't meant to be used as graphic art. I like to check typefaces by comparing specific characters. Image description to the right, titled Accessible Typeface Check, comparing 2 typefaces using B8, capital C, capital O, 0, lowercase c, lowercase o, number 1, capital I, capital L, lowercase l, and straight slash, placeholder text. Top box with a red outline and an X with Open Sans light underneath. Bottom box in teal and a check mark with Roboto Mono Regular underneath. As you can tell here, the top font doesn't differentiate the number 1 from an uppercase I or a lowercase l, which makes it hard to read, whereas the other font provides better distinction. It's not to say you can't play with typefaces, just be mindful how these characters look and how distinct the shapes are. Slide 18, designing for different disabilities. The UK government has a wonderful overview for the do's and don'ts on designing for accessibility by Carway Pun. It specifies different user groups, including autistic, screen readers, blind low vision, physical disabilities, deaf hard of hearing, and dyslexia. I've linked it rather than breaking it down here because, as with all resources, these are only to get you started. There can be cross-disability issues where one solution may not work for another. A couple of examples. A tip for low vision is to use a proper color contrast, whereas when designing for autism or dyslexia, you shouldn't use bright contrasting colors, which means we need to find a balance where the ratio is met but not overdone. A tip for low vision is to publish all information on web pages, but that could create walls of text, which could cause fatigue for physical disabilities scrolling or for legibility for autistic or dyslexic people. The takeaway here is that universal design is definitely important, but accessibility is also an ongoing process. One rule might have to be adapted for one project or strictly enforced for another. Slide 19, Wcag Overview. Again, I could spend a full hour going through the web content accessibility guidelines. Instead, I'll share the document, Guide to Wcag, created by myself and Kai Prince. We outlined a simple step-by-step breakdown of the 2.1 guidelines, including how to use the document, what the levels of compliance are, areas of compliance for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, overview in simple terms with links to the original document for understanding compliance, and resources. Basically, you want to strive for AA compliance, plus provide elements and thought into considering disabled users. There are plenty of goodies in the resources and links segment that dive into this even further. Slide 20, sharing content online. Artwork by Amanda Rios, she, her, website ariosgraphics.com. Image description, painted gradient mesh background, blending deep purple into bright red, orange, and teal. Slide 21, image descriptions. Describing your image in text format is important for social media accessibility. Not to be confused with alt text, which I'll explain later, IDs provide context to visuals like images, videos, and GIFs. They're valuable for blind and low vision folk, or for those who process easier by reading rather than visualizing. A few tips on writing visual and image descriptions. Number 1, put it in the captions, not the comments. Nesting IDs in comments can make it difficult for screen readers to find. Number 2, never assume race or gender. If you don't know the person's identity, use gender-neutral language and note skin tone. Number 3, focus on the purpose of the visual. Focus on key elements that convey the reason and context. Example, if you're advertising a shirt, focus on the shirt design rather than the background. Number 4, type out all text. Example, when describing a screenshot of a tweet, add the heading, username, and tweet text. Number 5, keep freaking practicing. I'm always adapting my style and learning new ways to write my descriptions. Slide 22, description styles. I get a lot of people hesitant to start doing their own descriptions, but here's the scoop. There's no one right way to do them. It's very subjective to writing style and personality. If you're really stuck, here's 3 basic styles to choose from. Pick one you feel comfortable with and go from there. It definitely depends on the environment and the purpose of the visual. I'm going to describe the image on the left in each style as an example. Number 1, basic. Focus on the facts and the text. ID, image description with baby Jess text, with a baby photo of her underneath. Sitting in a chair, Jess holds sunglasses down at her nose and has a pacifier in her mouth. Number 2, descriptive. Similar to basic, but more detail. Image description, Jess as a baby, sitting in a large manual chair, holding her sunglasses down at her nose. She has white skin and is dressed in a 90s style with a hat, patterned leggings, pink sunglasses, and a pacifier. There are pegs and a toy bag on her tray. Text above reads, image descriptions with baby Jess in a handwritten style. Number 3, expressive. Have fun and add some personality. Visual description, baby Jess straight out of the 90s, rocking a baseball hat, pink sunglasses, and a pacifier so big she doesn't care if she's too old for it. Sitting in a manual chair 3 times her size, she is holding her sunglasses down to her nose, with a sassy expression that lets you know she's clearly too cool for the toys on her tray. Text above in a fun outline font reads, image descriptions with baby Jess. Slide 23, alt text. People get this mixed up with IDs. They are not the same. Alt text is embedded in the code of an image. Us web developers know it for providing text context if images don't load or are broken. Alt text is vital for screen readers. I like to keep it very short and sweet, making sure any text is written out. In the previous image, my alt text was simply image descriptions with baby Jess. Some people copy and paste their image description, but I don't like to. Since screen readers will read the same thing twice, it's very repetitive. In the next slide, I'm going to show how to add alt text in Instagram because it's really buried and hidden. For other social platforms, simply search how to add alt text on TikTok, Facebook, or whatever app you're using. Slide 24, adding alt text on Instagram. As you can tell, Instagram made it super easy to add. That was sarcasm. Here I have 3 screenshots of posting an image on Instagram that outlines the 3 steps for alt text. I've outlined the links in a red box for visibility. Step 1, the new post window when you get to the write a caption stage. Way down at the bottom, after all the tag, locations, promotional, and posting to other accounts options, you'll find a tiny advanced settings link. Step 2, under the advanced settings, you'll find a link under accessibility called Write Alt Text. It says alt text will be automatically created for your photos, or you can choose to write your own. Pro tip, write your own. Their auto-generated text is horribly inaccurate. Step 3, alt text window where you can type in the alt text for each image. Click the check mark at the top right corner when you're done. Slide 25, captioning and transcripts. All audio and video-based content should have both captions and transcripts. Captions are more than subtitles. They provide context for audio elements, including sounds, and added audio descriptions of the setting. A little improvision, same thing like how I introduced myself and let you all know what I was wearing in my environment. That's the perfect example. Manual captioning is preferred over auto-generated captions, which tend to misspell or skip vital information. Transcripts are similar to the document that was sent out for this presentation. In fact, I'm reading this word for word so people can follow along with assistive tech. On social media, I like to provide them in the caption of my video content, as well as captions embedded in the video itself. Legibility has a thorough deck of accessibility resources for captioning and transcripts. I've also provided links for apps to help create them in the resources and links section. Slide 26, accessible writing and hashtags. Long, convoluted posts can be exhausting and hard to read. Same with writing in large paragraphs. Be concise with your words. I use apps like Hemingway Editor to check the reading level of my work. This helps to use less idioms or passive text. For hashtags, capitalize the first letter of each word. This will allow screen readers to differentiate each word. It also makes it easier to read in general. Good, hashtag showing Jessica Odie, where the J and O are capitalized. Bad, hashtag showing Jessica Odie, all in lowercase. Slide 27, resources and links. Artist portrait, Hannah Sawyer, she, her. Website, thisbodyisworthy.com. Image description, a black and white photo of a light-skinned woman in a wheelchair looking straight ahead at the camera with her hands across her chest. The words "Celebrate this body" are written across her chest in cursive. Her dark hair is in a side braid and she has various tattoos on her arms. Slide 28, disabled representation. Crip Camp, a disability revolution, a Netflix documentary directed by Nicole Newman and Jim Lebret. Disability Visibility Project, an online community amplifying disability media founded by Alice Wong. Black Disabled Creatives, an initiative to bridge the divide for Black creatives with disabilities, founded by Jillian Mercado. Slide 29, disabled representation continued. Disabled and Here, a stock photo and interview collection celebrating disabled Black, Indigenous, people of color, created by Ellie Chang. Critical Access, a community-driven project from the Disabled List, analyzing disability representation in the media. Diana Yadalohi, providing accessibility and disability justice consulting and resources. Slide 30. Design web accessibility. The Ally Project, a community effort to make accessibility easy. Access Guide, a friendly introduction to accessibility by Alex Chen. Legibility, Accessibility Education and Courses by Erin Perkins. Veronica with 4 Eyes, free resource by Veronica Lewis for low and visual impairment. And Accessible Practices Overview, my own doc with links and guidelines and resources. Slide 31, Accessibility Tools. Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool by Wave, helping authors make their web content more accessible. Accessibility Insights by Microsoft, browser and extension to find and fix accessibility issues during development. Contrast Checker by WebAIM, compares the contrast ratio of 2 colors. Slide 32, Accessibility Tools Continued, Color Blindness Simulator by Colblinder, a tool to see images with levels of color blindness. Descript, podcasts, videos, and transcripts, an audio-video editor for transcriptions, screen reading, publishing, full multi-track editing, and useful AI tools. Hemingway Editor by Adam and Ben Long, text editor that makes writing bold and clear, provides suggestions for understandable copy. Slide 33, thank you. And slide 34, thank you to everyone who attended today and to Wethos for having me. This recording will be available after and posted on my website with captions and transcript, which will include the Q&A. If you ever want to chat about accessibility or disability, you can find me, email od.jessica@gmail.com or Instagram user @od.jessica. And that is all I wrote.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Let's see, as we enter the Q&A section here, we have one question from Sabrina. She says, I have a question about Instagram screen readers and alt text. If a post has multiple slides, does the screen reader read alt text for each slide? Can you add alt text for each slide?
Yes, great question. You can absolutely do that. So the example I showed only had one image, but when you do multiple images, a box shows up for each one. It just doesn't do it for videos, but Instagram is doing auto captioning onto their IGTV, and I think they just included it in their stories as well. Like, not everyone has it yet. I think this just happened last week. So that's another way there. And then in your image descriptions in the caption, you can simply label like slide 1 or ID 1, ID 2, ID 3.
Awesome. Thank you. I feel I've learned so much from this workshop. So thank you so much for your time and for putting it together. While we were promoting this, we also got a few questions just from social media. So we have one from someone who asks, what's your best practice for establishing accessibility standards right from the start, so the client knows this going into the project with you?
Ooh, okay, good question. I mean, I feel like it's so subjective and it really depends on the purpose. So I basically do brands mostly and web design. So what I like to do is throughout the process, discuss what areas I'm going to focus on to make them accessible. So when I'm choosing an initial color palette, I let them know that, like, listen, these color contrasts are all checkmarked, and I will actually be providing you resources in your brand guide document. Now, that's my big thing. I love to give documents. My brand guides are huge because I like to give rules, and I have like full-on accessibility charts for people. Sometimes I even write examples of how to do image descriptions. So I think it really comes down to starting like an outline of what we're making and then how to make that accessible through like step-by-step processes. And I know for a lot of like UX UI designers, research and crowdsourcing are huge elements. So make sure that you're getting that research from the disabled community as well. And you're actually have people who use assistive tech involved in your research. So maybe reach out to them personally, or I don't know if there are actual like calls for people to do that sort of thing too, because I'm very solo designer, so I don't really have much community connections that way. But I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think that's great context to have. Let's see, another question here. First of all, they say thank you so much. And also, I'm curious if you have any experience with the closed captioning for IGTV. I have been manually burning captions onto the video, but not sure if they are accessible for screen readers. And we do have a reply from one of the participants saying, open captions are not accessible to assistive tech, provide access to a video with CC.
Exactly. So closed captions are actually like better for assistive tech, obviously, because it's not just burning it onto the video. I actually haven't tested to see if the auto captioning is closed or open for Instagram. That's a very good question. And I'm going to turn on my screen reader after this and go test it out. But what I do as a fail-safe for social media, if it's not an option, I actually paste the transcript of the entire video in my caption instead of writing a caption. So if you take a look at my Reels section on Instagram, for example, because I also burned the captions in there because there are no, you know, apps that are doing that now. Like I said, they're just starting to add closed captionings to stories. So I actually paste it into my captions as a backup. So at least people can use that with their screen readers and still follow along.
Cool, that makes tons of sense. And Payne says, thank you, Sam and Jessica. We have one more question from Sabrina. I noticed that on your Instagram stories, you have included audio with your photo. Is there a specific tool you use to do this, or is there a feature on Instagram?
Great question. I wish Instagram did a feature. It's such, I don't even want to say a pain because it's not a pain. It's, I like doing this, but it's such a convoluted process. So what I do is if I'm sharing an Instagram post on my story, let's say, right? Because when you're doing a video, I can use apps like Descript to actually burn the captions into it. So I can just speak and use video, like external apps like that. But for examples, when I'm sharing a post, I share the post and then I download the image. I have an app called Ucut. It's on Android devices. I'm pretty sure it's available for iPhone users as well, but I have an Android. So any video editing software that lets you add audio recordings will work. So I open up the app, I upload the image, I expand the timeline, and then I record my audio recording on top of it so that I can read aloud any text and describe the actual image itself. Then I download that, upload the video to my Instagram stories, and then re-add in any tagged people, because if you just upload the video itself, it won't tag anyone because it's just a flattened image. Unfortunately, Instagram stories don't have image description or alt text capabilities yet. So while they just added closed captioning, which is a step in the right direction, stories are still inaccessible for screen readers, especially also to consider people who are deaf and blind. You really need to be able to do both and have that audio element with your video elements with your text-based.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. It really makes you think about how behind so many of these social media platforms are for how many people use them. And then let's see, we don't have any questions from the chat right now, but another one from one of our social audience members. What are your tips for infographics / visuals that handle the communication of a lot of data? Especially right now, we're seeing such an uptick in the sharing of infographics on social media.
Yes, infographics are a great way to convey information. You just need to provide text context as well. You know, you have to be prepared to describe all of those objects, especially if they're more than just decorative, right? Like on a website, if an image is just for decoration purpose or a symbol that doesn't help actually give the information, then it's okay. But in general, yeah, you want to be able to describe it and try to follow a reading like left to right kind of situation, right? So make sure your infographics aren't randomly placed, that they're not overly confusing, or you have to go from like point A to C to B. You know, make sure everything kind of has a hierarchy structure so that people can follow along and you can describe it easier. So like whether it's sticking to the same order of maybe having the infographic to the left more and then the text to the right, so then you can keep doing that and keep copying the same iterations, then people are going to be able to follow along easier. Graphics themselves need a 3:1 contrast ratio. So when you're considering the designs or your color palette for an infographic, make sure there's enough contrast that people can actually see what it is, not really like fading it out, or try not to overlap text on top of it. Try to separate your symbols from your text so that everything's easy to read.
Awesome. That's great advice. And oh, we have one more from Sam Kelly. Thanks, Jess. Which 3 features by priority would you like to see from TikTok?
This is going to show that I'm 30 years old and I'm getting older. I don't have TikTok. I do know that in general, they have some really good applications in comparison. Like there's a feature that has an automated voice. So it actually reads out the text you're typing. I don't know if it's used for accessibility or if it's just people like using it, but I think a TikTok, I'm not really sure the capabilities of how it works, right? Oh, that's good to know. See, I'm reading Sam's Kelly comment. They said, I'm 31 and they have text to audio for creators. So like, you know, every other app could get on that. That would be wonderful. And in general, I maybe even like prompts would be nice for people, because I know oftentimes with TikTok videos, or from what I've seen when they're shared on Instagram, is it's just like loud blaring music and then text on top, but then they're not actually reading out the text. So, you know, people with visual impairments have no idea that there are texts there. So make sure that you put the text of the joke or the whatever that you're posting in your captions as well, so that people with screen readers or that can't see what you're doing can follow along, rather than just hearing random music with no purpose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's see. Anyone else have any questions?
And feel free to ask, like, if you have any questions about disability or ableism or anything on that realm, I would love to be open about that too, because I know people sometimes get a little bit nervous about that, or they're worried they'll say the quote wrong thing or anything. So, and if not, if you don't want to share it now too, I'm always available to chat afterwards if you feel like a more intimate conversation would be better.
Cool. I like to give people sometimes 2 minutes to sit with their questions. I feel like in the quiet, eventually some questions bubble up.
Yes, for sure. And it's so funny about the comments that people say about, like, you know, that Sabrina said about these platforms could be designed more inclusively. And it's so funny because, well, not funny, but, you know, tech is moving so fast. And sometimes it moves so fast that the assistive tech, you know, needs time to catch up, or, you know, that's also advancing very fast. I mean, I remember even back in my school days where tech, I was like privileged by getting to have a laptop. No one else in the class got a laptop. So it was like we had so much of these cool innovative techs for disabled people to use, and to, you know, if for me it's because typing was faster and easier than writing, because I also couldn't push hard on pencils, so no one could read what I was writing on paper. So and then now we're in such a tech advanced area that people think, oh, it's just so great for convenient, yet we've really lost the connection to make it accessible, which was very much most of its purpose at the beginning, you know, like I'm talking 90s again, I'm dating myself, but so it's just which is why it's critical to really start out with accessible design. You know, like Instagram could have created an entire stories platform that was screen reader accessible from the beginning, and now they're going to have to do a lot of backcoding and changing, like even these closed caption rollouts for stories. It doesn't get included to every user yet. I mean, I didn't even get Instagram Music until like 2-3 years maybe after having Instagram. So, you know, it just doesn't come out fast enough.
Yeah, and I mean, it really seems like instead of folding in accessibility as a core right from the beginning, it's like playing catch up at the end, or like an afterthought, really having to fold it in later.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, we're just at time. Thank you so much, Jessica, for this really wonderful workshop. And thank you to everyone who spent their time here with us tonight. This recording, as a reminder, will be sent out to everyone afterwards. So you will be able to access that, and you'll continue to have access to the presentation and the transcript as well.
Thank you.
We also have one last question from Sam. Will you get Clubhouse on maybe a family member's device?
Ooh, you know, I'm iffy with Clubhouse. They're working slowly now towards accessibility, but it is not inclusive for the deaf community. Especially there's no actual like video options, so people can use ASL, as well as there's no auto, and there's also no, you know, like closed captioning features. So I've heard that there are many hard of hearing people who do use the app and are fine with it. And then I know people like Aaron Perkins who are completely against the app because they have no way of accessing it. And it really did exclude an entire group. And so until it becomes more accessible or more open to changing the platform, like I understand the entire purpose was to be audio based, but you know, that excludes an entire group of people. And this launched and boomed out of nowhere as far as like the extreme, you know, platform, like it's been gaining so much traction, yet they haven't fixed that fundamental issue. And it's still so new that I hope as their development team begins that they can start looking into these things and we can fight for accessibility to be, you know, better on there. And maybe that involves me joining and actually being on the app once it's available to Androids, so that I could try to do it from the inside, or it's about boycotting it until they can actually include everybody. So I'm not quite sure where I sit on that one yet. Ooh, okay. Sam Kelly said that there's one iOS developer that she's working with directly with two groups to make the app more accessible at Clubhouse. And they have acknowledged their efforts, and it's hashtag Clubhouse Ally with A11YY or Y and Clubhouse Access Now. And I do know Access Now because I am actually affiliated, or I'm connected with the owner of Access Now that I've done work for them, and we follow each other on socials. She's also from Toronto, so that's like, you know, huge Canadian representation. And I've been actually following along with the progression they've made on there, and I'm very happy for it. So, you know, I don't know if I'll get it on a family's device because then my poor mother will be out of her iPhone for long periods of time. But as soon as I can get available on it, maybe I'll help work on it from the inside. And thank you, Sam Kelly, for all of your efforts. That's awesome.
All right. If we don't have any other questions from our audiences, I guess we can wrap up. If anyone has any questions about this recording or anything else, you can always reach me at Anne, 1A, 1N, at wethos.co. I've also dropped it into the chat box as well. So yeah, and Jess, if you have anything you want to shout out, any projects that you have coming up before we close out, feel free to share it out.
Yeah, sure. I have like two. So there's one that my sister and I do for fun. It's completely just to relax or poke fun at life. It's called The Disabled Life. We're on Instagram, The Disabled Life, Twitter, but we're not really that active on Twitter. And we have a website too with the original blog where we kind of draw and illustrate our lives. As well, I'm working on a community called Access Design Collective with a few people. I'm hoping to launch more in 2022 because I run on creep time because I'm tired and I don't have all of the energy to build an entire platform. But the idea behind it is to have like a WordPress or a space where we will host one-on-one interviews of disabled creatives and get their perspectives on disability culture, philosophies, experiences, as well as accessibility techniques or tips that they use. Because, I truly believe that there is no monolith or one experience. Everything makes the world go. And there are many types of people with many different relationships to their disability. And I want to provide a open opportunity or a space for everyone to share those experiences and more importantly to learn from others' experiences. Even in advocacy and activism in general, I find there has to be a balance between sharing our own stories and actually opening up or realizing when there's like cross disability issues or when some person has a completely different perspective than someone else. So I want this space to be a place where we can express those feelings, we can express those viewpoints and talk about them. And then also for like non-disabled people to like hop on and understand real life perspectives and real life, values and views from the disabled community itself. So yeah, that's hopefully in 2022.
That's awesome. And what a great note to end on. So thank you, everyone. Hope you all are having a great afternoon/night. And yeah, happy Friday tomorrow. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.